Hello, everyone. Welcome to CXO Spice. CXO Spice is a platform for thought leaders to share their point of view on innovation and explain how to make it happen in real world. Today's topic is responsible AI. Our special guest today is Chris Wolf, VP of AI Labs at VMware. Hi, Chris. Welcome to CXO Spice.
Hi, Helen. Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us more about your journey to tech, your previous role as Chief Research and Innovation Officer at VMware, and how it led to spearheading VMware AI Labs.
Yeah, it's a great question. So VMware is a company where you really have to earn these different roles. It's what I've always appreciated about VMware is it's a very inquisitive and intellectual company. The company is not afraid to go after very difficult engineering challenges. And I'd say, as a company, it's always been associated with challenges that people have around interoperability, getting different things to run well together, et cetera. And so for me, it was I don't know, let me wind back here. I guess maybe about 5 years or so ago, I was asked to lead the advanced development function in the CTO office, and we started having good success being able to take a big idea, scope it down to something meaningful that we can ship, and then moving these ideas into product very quickly. That had led to a broader role taking on what had been defined as the CTO office at VMware. When we did a reorg, we kind of moved that into a team we called the Research and Innovation Organization. And in leading that, we were able to get to quite a bit of success, roughly 30 transfers of tech project into shipping product in a 2-year period. And of course, we had folks that were already researching and doing longer term outlook work in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So when it came time where we saw this, huge thrust around AI, we thought it made a lot of sense to really just focus the organization on just the AI piece, and instead of having a more broad purview looking at edge and security and other topics, we really narrowed in around AI and AI adjacencies. So, whether it's data or security services that can help make AI operations easier, these were the areas that we look to focus on, in addition to really standing up the AI services across the company.
Wow, 30 in 2 years. Kudos. That's amazing. I actually really enjoyed the Responsible AI panel at VMware Explore recently, especially some of the insights you shared that actually inspired today's conversation. So before we dive into our discussion on responsible AI, let's start with, where do business stand in terms of AI readiness in general?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. You have certain industry verticals where they've had rich data analytics practices going back decades. If you look at financial services as a good example of that. And because they've had teams really versed in these skill sets, it was natural for them to really jump in feet first into some of these different AI use cases. So that's one. So there's a base of experience, which I think helps. Second, what we're seeing is there are these turnkey types of use cases for AI as well, where organizations might look to take advantage of a SaaS service. It's something we're even doing for marketing inside VMware, where we use an external service to help us with content generation. However, one of the drawbacks I'm seeing is I had recently met with the CIO of a retailer, and he shared with me that they're using AI to generate email content for customers and prospective customers. And he recently received some emails from one of their competitors, and he's like, wow, this looks exactly the same as what we send. So he's starting to see, right, this convergence of, wait a minute, this isn't really good for us because we don't now stand out. So he was actually taking a step back and saying, we have to think a little bit more differently about this, how we can kind of create our own brand and curate AI around our own private data, which was really important. So there's these early movers, and then there's also, I think, some pragmatism where folks are saying, what does it make sense for my business? I don't want to move too fast and put my business at risk of intellectual property or copyright infringement and things like this. So there's definitely some there's these desires for getting things done quickly to show the board of the company that you're innovative, but then there's also this reality that I don't want to run afoul of, legal issues or compliance issues, but just for the sake of speed.
That's very well said, Chris. I actually still remember what you said during the panel. You talk about avoid the temptation of having a quick win to just satisfy the mandate of early success of AI. Resonated with me. So what is your definition of responsible AI, and what's needed to make business AI ready?
Yeah, that's a great question, Helen. And this even gets back to, the temptations around quick wins, where I can go and consume a service, but then it might create particular lock-in or stickiness, where it might be difficult to abstract important company data or intellectual property from that service. And this is where we are seeing folks be more mindful. When we start to think about responsible AI, it's a number of things that are really important. It's understanding, first, how is the model trained, and having some insight into the data that's used to train the model. These are ideal, and not all models today disclose that. They consider that to be proprietary information based on how the model was constructed. We want to see AI that's explainable, so that it's very clear to organizations, where those results are coming from. We want to see fairness in the model, so that there is true attention being paid to the accuracy of the model, and then the outputs that are being generated, that they're free of bias. These are, really important areas, and it takes a team to be able to look at model output, adjust model weights, and sometimes even compensate for what could be biases in the data set that was used to build the model in the first place.
It is a collective effort among the team members. That being said, the idea of humans and AI working collaboratively become more visible with the arrival of generative AI. And are consumer AI technology like ChatGPT really suitable for business use? Do you foresee alternate solutions?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to look at this. So, if you look at like GPT-4 as a model and ChatGPT as the app or the interface for interacting with it, the large language models do serve a purpose. They can provide you, great starting points for messaging, for creating outlines to do tasks. But you still have to be careful in terms of leveraging them as just a pure authoritative source for information. And this is where, the concept of hallucinations often comes up. And the challenge is a model can be, or the output from even like ChatGPT can be factually wrong. But the output is articulated with such confidence, right? It will lead you to believe otherwise. So in the enterprise, like if I look at, like, say, just VMware, because we're like a lot of our customers, we've used external services, but we also have stood up internal services around open source models, such as Llama 2, which is a service we make available internally now to our employees. And it's a good example of a large language model, but we're also using specialized models that have been built around a very particular function. One is what we're working with Hugging Face on, which is their SafeCoder solution, which is a model. It's a 15 billion parameter model that's just trained specifically on about 80 different software languages. And that helps in code development. And we expect that you're going to see a lot more of these going forward in the future, where you have these smaller models that are trained against a data set that's particular to a certain business function. And what's great about the small models is that you can continue to optimize them even on a weekly basis with fresh data to keep that model current and keep the output really solid. That's much more difficult to do with a large language model, which might take a very long period of time, maybe months, to train with a very large number of GPUs, which makes them fairly cost prohibitive. So you have to kind of separate out, when do I want to leverage like a large language model and these GPT type services against when does it make sense to have a domain specific model that might be commercial or open source that I can leverage against a particular business problem.
Well, I wish I had you years ago when I started deploying AI, working with global financial institutions. Obviously, the domain-specific model is really needed, right? You talked about VMware Private AI and democratize AI in the business world. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so when we looked at AI ourselves, the first thing we wanted to do was first set some corporate guardrails. We formed an AI council to help guide and shape different individual business decisions and have central governance of AI. We wanted to stand up our own internal platforms and services so that we can ensure that we maintain control over intellectual property. It's not being used to perhaps train a model that would benefit our competitors, et cetera. Leveraging this for customer service and support, allowing our support folks to be able to, gain answers more quickly. So these were the things that we started looking at, and as we were going down this journey ourselves and standing up our own stack, we saw that these notions around maintaining privacy of our data sets and also control of our data wasn't just a VMware problem, right? This was a universal concern that we saw just about every enterprise and every industry vertical have. So then to us, it made sense to say, well, the next logical step for us is to package this up into something that we can offer to customers to help them on their own AI journeys. And I'd say key for VMware is what we also have realized is that the space is moving so quickly that you can't just bet on a single software stack today. It's just not practical, especially as you start to see more business function oriented models and services really emerge that I think are going to be important to a lot of organizations. So the bet we're making is to build a platform that provides optionality so that I can leverage either open source or commercial models today that solve particular business problems. And then as new services come around, I can just stand them up via a software update. So I make the investment in the core foundation for these AI services. And then in the future, I'm basically future proof. So as new things come along, I can quickly onboard them. I can do other things such as be able to have full awareness of my GPU inventory and be able to intelligently connect them to the services that require, and in many cases, share GPUs among multiple services. So that helps also to lower costs and lead to a better TCO in many cases, even than some of the public cloud services. So those were some of the core areas for us around private AI. We announced a private AI foundation with NVIDIA at Explore. That's an important partnership for us. We also announced a reference architecture and code samples for the do-it-yourselfers out there that want to have a little more optionality in the stack. And this is the path that we want to continue to stay on.
Well, that's exciting. And I mean, AI console, by the way, is ahead. It's really ahead of its time, right? So kudos to our vision and leadership. And you mentioned a few really important points here, right? Have the choice built in as a capability is number one. And then secondly, you talk about the lightweight special purpose model that allows company to experiment with smaller model, easier to test data, with less resources involved. That's fascinating. So could you provide some example of successful human AI collaboration model that boosts efficiency and accountability?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's one of the things that's out there that definitely I think we just need to provide more information so folks know the options. The group of people that stood up our initial internal AI service stack is a total of 5 people. So it's not like we had to put hundreds of people on this to be able to stand up a service. And this is using our core technology that definitely helped us. So we were able to really check the box around all of the infrastructure services really quickly, and then leverage popular open source projects as well to layer on top of that. Things like Ray, PyTorch, and Kubeflow are some good examples. And then we look to apply it to use cases. So I think this is where things got interesting for us. So we were very interested in AI-assisted code development. And while we looked at solutions like GitHub Copilot, we really found that as something we were comfortable with for upstream open source contributions, where we can use the tool and then also pass it through our open source compliance scans and feel really good about what was created using permissively licensed open source code. But then we said, we need something different that we can run inside our data centers for our own code development. And that's what got us to working with Hugging Face. And we had announced not just a partnership with them, but also a joint solution with Hugging Face that was called SafeCoder, that would allow you to run this model on premises. Now, to get to the heart of your example, when we brought the model down, we did see that it had some challenges, the base model from Hugging Face, such as if you were coding in C, it might just randomly throw some Python code in there, which didn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. So then what we did was we looked at the commits from our top software engineers, or a subset of those, and we used that as the data set to tune the Hugging Face model. And the tuning took place in it wasn't even half a day. It was a very small period of time, using a very small hardware footprint, just a couple of GPUs. And since then, we've opened it up to now inferencing, where the software engineers will log in and use this assisted code development. We're seeing a scale of up to 400 software engineers on one NVIDIA A100 GPU, which is really just amazing. And on top of that, and just in terms of just user acceptance, more than 90% of the software engineers that have participated in the pilot want to keep using the tool. And these are, we think we have some of the best software engineers in the industry. And if they're seeing that kind of success, we think it's just inevitable. Everybody's going to be coding this way. And even folks who are non-coders are going to be able to put together some of these solutions very quickly with the use of these tools. And again, I think the key learnings for us are, you typically need less hardware than you would think to tune a model against your private business data. And then even for operating it, again, it's probably going to be less hardware than you think. So that overall investment in, say, GPUs to get started, it may not be so cost prohibitive or such a barrier as you might believe. And we're going to be publishing more examples of our internal use cases so folks can see more examples like that.
Wow, that's remarkable, right? 400 engineers on one GPU. I remember back in the days, I work with an AI startup where we need literally 2 to 3 of engineers needs 3 different GPUs. It was massive amount of investment to really get AI even running on those hardware. So let's switch gear a little bit. Insights around the team you build at AI Labs at VMware really jump out the page for me during that panel. So could you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, just for context for folks, so the size of the organization is about a couple hundred people. And the journey I've been on in terms of building these innovation teams at VMware has now gone back, I guess, in the neighborhood of 6 years. And what's always been important to me is seeing the value that you can gain from in innovation from having diverse perspectives in the room when decisions are being made. So that was a core principle of the organization when we even first formed. And I tell you, if I go back even, 4 years ago, VMware had a reorganization. And at the time, I want to say the organization I had, we had built it up to about, it was around 30% or so women. And these are software engineering types of roles. During the reorg, I had lost almost all of the women in the organization. And people said, well, that's got to be really hard now. How are you going to, build diversity back up? And I said, actually, it's going to be quite easy, because we've already done the hard part, which is change the culture, which is get all of the members of the organization to, fully understand that diversity is a benefit. It's a strength of the organization, and it allows us to innovate more and better and do so more efficiently. Put behind like the 30 technology transfers I mentioned earlier, that was, that's because we have a high hit rate, a high accuracy rate with what we take on, especially relative to the size of our organization. So that's made a huge difference for us. And, if I look at where we're at today now, we're in the neighborhood of, last I checked, 35% women, but we've just had more women come on board actually in the last month. So it's probably a little bit higher than that. And how VMware accounts for both women and what we call underrepresented minorities, that represents almost 50% of my organization. And these are folks at all layers of the team. So whether that's junior folks just getting started to mid-level folks, whether it's management or individual contributors, all the way up to the upper echelon of the organization's leadership. In fact, we have 3 different innovation work streams: research, incubation, and advanced development. And the research and advanced development functions are both led by very, very competent and very just inspiring women in the industry, in Sujata Banerjee and Tasha Drew, who are just fantastic colleagues who are fully bought into the culture we have, and it makes a huge difference. And now because the organization is structured this way, we have like people knocking on our door all the time. People want to work for us, and I think the other thing I'm most proud of is if we look at the period of time where there was the Great Resignation and all of this tumult in IT and even VMware. So we went through COVID like everybody else, and for the past year we've been going through this acquisition with Broadcom. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and what's been incredible about our organization is the entire leadership team has stayed through the pandemic and has stayed through the Broadcom merger, because they feel, and I think most of the people in the organization feel, that they can go other places and maybe they'll even make more money, but they are not going to beat the culture that we have here and what we built. And that matters a lot to them. And I think that's really helped us from a continuity perspective.
Well, Chris, that's impressive, inspiring, and impressive, right? So my last question is, what's on the horizon for VMware AI Labs, and what AI-related innovations are you most excited about?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot coming. So, for us, it's continuing to shore up our foundation and add important capabilities and more differentiating capabilities to the solution. So think about things like in a private AI foundation, being able to ensure confidentiality of data sets that are being used, even in shared memory. That's something that we see is increasingly important to customers. We're really committed to having a large variety of services that can run wherever customers are creating data. And that's what's really important to us about private AI. Is our goal is to move the AI compute and the AI models to wherever you're creating data, or you need to have that ability. So as I look forward, I expect to see broader relationships with the most important open source projects, more coming in terms of the commercial AI services to run on our stack. Much more coming as well around even public cloud services being able to come down and run on our stack, so that customers have all of this different type of optionality. I think that's really key. We're building AI technologies that dramatically change how efficient folks can be in really critical areas such as security. So we have ways to use AI that can find zero-day attacks simply by understanding what is the known good behavior of an application, so that we're able to very quickly and intelligently find anomalies in that behavior that could be, some type of malware. Same thing for changing the lives of the SecOps security analyst. We're building technology that can reduce the number of security events that SecOps analyst has to observe by up to 90%, which is huge. And then we can take our real-time security event observations and then turn them into new firewall rules and security policies automatically, which to me is critical, because we're at an era now where AI is even generating malware, right? So your defenses have to be equal, if not more sophisticated than the threats you face. So that's also a really important area of investment for us.
Yeah, I echo what you just said. We have to let AI deal with AI when it comes to building better defense. And then we, balancing the defense and offense strategy altogether. Thank you so much, Chris, for sharing your wisdom and thought leadership on responsible AI with us today. Here are actually 4 key takeaways from our conversation. Number 1 is about AI readiness in business in general. You highlighted the current state of AI business readiness, and we're still in that early stage of enterprise adoption, despite of the enthusiasm about AI. And number 2 is responsible AI is on all of us. You talk about team, right, efforts. There are no industry standards just yet, so we need a humble, inquisitive approach like what VMware offering. It's about being flexible, ethical, and staying curious. And I want to quote you again to avoid the temptation of having a quick win to just satisfy the early success of AI. So be mindful, having the choice built in as a capability. And number three, we highlighted the emergence of generative AI and its potential for collaborative work. It actually raised questions about whether consumer AI technologies like ChatGPT are suitable for business use, or if an alternate solution are necessary. It's really important, right? You mentioned it's important to adopt a platform that gives you the ability to pivot as technology evolves and align with your business goals and value. Lastly, the VMware Private AI Foundation, in collaboration with NVIDIA, Hugging Face, making it much easier to manage large language models securely in the AI workloads. That's, to me, is a lightweight special purpose model, allows companies to experiment with smaller model, easier to test data, with less resources involved and less carbon footprint and more accurate data. So thank you, VMware, for continuous efforts driving responsible AI. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Stay hungry, stay bold, and stay grateful.